use a computer, then over the next 7 weeks we have some very exciting news for you.
And if you own a Commodore 64, a BBC, a Spectrum or an Amstrad, we've got some free software for you as well.
Now, this flashing blob here is not a fault on your set. I'll be explaining that to you later on.
But first, how would you like to programme our opening titles? Mick, you're one of our graphics designers here at Thames and you programmed that sequence on the Atari 800. Can you tell us a bit about the programme?
Yeah, sure. Basically what I did was divide the screen up. So I had a background screen and a foreground screen, and the foreground images were laid over the top of the background images, and then the combination of the two was written to a third screen. And whilst you were viewing that, the next background and next foreground were written to a fourth screen, and you're cutting the from one to another and constantly updating.
So it's like superimposing one screen on top of the other?
That's right, yeah.
How long did it take you to do the graphic sequence?
Well, it's about 2 weeks of very hard work.
Was it the first one you've done on a computer or not?
No, I've done some other things, but this is much more sophisticated than I've tried before.
But you enjoyed doing it as well?
Oh, yeah.
Great. And if you'd like to write a graphic sequence on your micro lasting no longer than 30 seconds, then send it to us here at 4 Computer Buffs, Thames Television, 149 Tottenham Court Road, London W1P 9LL. And who knows, your sequence could open next week's show. Tony.
Well now, if you have around about £400 to spend and you're considering buying either perhaps the BBC machine or the QL or the Amstrad, which one do you choose? Well, one of the things that might help you make up your mind is to pick up a copy of Personal Computer World magazine and read one of their regular bench tests. Now, by the merest chance, this gentleman sitting next to me, David Tebbutt, is the man who devised those bench tests for PCW magazine. And we're going to put him really on the spot because in a moment he's going to perform the very first television computer bench test. So you better get it right. To see if he does, we have a distinguished panel here to see fair play in the shape of Tony Harris, who is the publisher of PCW, Graham Cunningham there in the middle with the glasses, who is the editor of that magazine, and our resident old mate, Guy Cuney, the computer journalist. So a distinguished team of experts to see if poor David Tebbutt gets it absolutely right in the very first television computer bench test right here.
I suppose the ideal computer is one which satisfies all your needs, from zapping aliens to running your business. Now, clearly, not all machines are suitable, but there are some inexpensive machines around which might do the job. Today I'm going to introduce you to 3 of them. First, the BBC Model B. Long in the tooth, perhaps, but still a popular choice. Then we have Sinclair's elegant but controversial QL. Finally, we have a machine from a company better known for its hi-fi, the Amstrad CPC 464. The BBC and the QL rely heavily on their technical specifications to attract buyers. The BBC with its wide range of add-ons, and the QL with its large memory and powerful processor, whereas the Amstrad comes across as a straightforward, ready-to-run machine. Let's see what's in the boxes. First of all, the BBC. There's the machine, the keyboard and control unit, and in the box, a user guide and a welcome pack. The QL provides a little more. In fact, we have the QL itself with its microdrives over here. And then in the box, a power supply, various leads, including a printer lead, the manual, and some software and blank cassettes. Finally, the Amstrad comes as a keyboard cassette unit, and in the box, a manual and a pack of £100 worth of software. You can either have a colour monitor with the Amstrad or a green and white plain monitor. Out of a possible 25 points, I've given the BBC 8, the QL 18 because of its microdrives and its software, and the Amstrad 20 because it's got a cassette unit, monitor and software. Different things affect the efficiency of a computer. The fastest processor in the world cannot make up for the deficiencies of a poor typist. The timings we're about to do will test the speed of the basic interpreter performing mathematically intensive tasks. We'll start the timings now and pop back later to see how they're coming along. Until computers can understand speech or thought, we're stuck with the need to communicate through a keyboard. Like a pair of shoes, it pays you to find something comfortable. The BBC has a traditional sprung keyboard. The keys feel like those on an electric typewriter or a professional computer terminal. The QL keyboard mechanism comprises a plastic moulding which forms a series of bubbles on which the keys rest. It works, but it doesn't lend itself to touch typing. The mechanism of the Amstrad is similar to the QL's, but a better design makes it much more pleasant to use. Out of 20 points, we'll give the BBC 18 for its quality, the QL 8 and the Amstrad 11, because, although they're both bubble-based, Amstrad has a better feel. To show the graphics of each machine to best advantage, we asked each manufacturer to choose its favourite graphics programme. BBC Graphics can take as much as 20k of memory. With a resolution of 160 by 256 points, this gives an impressive 16 colours. Maximum resolution is 640 by 256, with just 2 colours. The QL can afford to give away 32k for its graphics, although the best it can do is 8 colours at a resolution of 256 by 256. Maximum resolution is just double this, at 512 by 256, and that's with 4 colours. Amstrad graphics are tucked into a meagre 16k, and with a resolution of 160 by 200 can achieve a selection of 16 colours from a palette of 27. Maximum resolution is 640 by 400 on a 2-colour screen. The BBC wins on maximum resolution, but pays for it in memory, and the fact it can only handle 2 colours at this resolution. So, out of a maximum of 10, the BBC scores only 4 points. The QL comes next on resolution, but its 4 colours give it the edge, and so it scores 8 points. Although good on colour, the Amstrad is let down by its resolution, and thus scores 6. The Amstrad remains in the lead, while the BBC has moved down into 3rd place. To get some idea of graphics performance, we shall get each machine to perform some simple drawing routines. Each machine will be tested in its 4-colour mode. The BBC can plot points and draw lines. It will fill triangles, but other shapes require some programming effort. The circle was derived from a formula rather than a circle command. Plotting, drawing and circles pose no problem for the QL. Like the BBC, filling is possible, but it requires careful thought and programming effort. Plotting and drawing are straightforward on the Amstrad, but circles and shape filling need to be programmed. Out of 10 points, the BBC gets 4 because it has a limited fill command, the QL 5 for its circles and half a fill command, and the Amstrad gets just 3, which means that Amstrad now holds on to its lead by a single point. If you're to use your computer for games or music, then you'll be interested in the range of notes, the number of channels, and the facilities for shaping the waveform of the sounds. The BBC has 3 sound channels plus a noise channel. It plays just over 5 octaves and has a decent envelope shaper. The QL provides the modestly named beep command, which provides a single channel of sound. The Amstrad provides 3 channels, right speaker, left speaker, and both speakers, 8 octaves plus both volume and tone envelopes. So, let's check the scores. Out of a possible 5 points, the BBC gets 4 because of its smart envelope control. The QL gets 1 because at least it made a noise, and the Amstrad 4 because of its channel control and envelope shaping facilities. That leaves Amstrad still in the lead with 44 points. One of the major influences on the long-term success of a computer is the range of add-on hardware and software products available. For most people, this should be a key factor in their decision to buy. Unlike our other contestants, the BBC has been on the market for a few years now. Accordingly, you can buy just about any add-on or piece of software you could possibly need. The QL was launched in early 1984, although deliveries didn't pick up for several months. Since then, a modest but growing support industry has developed. A count of the advertisements in a recent issue of PCW showed 20 items for the QL. Amstrad is an even more recent arrival than the QL. The same search through PCW found 10 items, plus some AmSoft programs. The number of supporting products relates to the popularity of the machine and the time it's been on the market. Accordingly, we end up with 22 points out of 25 for the BBC, 8 for the QL and 5 for the Amstrad. This means that the BBC has now grabbed a clear lead from the relative newcomers. Let's see what the final tally was in the benchmark timings. I suspect we have 1 or 2 surprises on our hands. The BBC and the Amstrad were the fastest. Out of 5 points, we'll give the BBC 3, the QL 2 and the Amstrad 4. This gives us the final tally. Out of a maximum of 100 points, the BBC scores 63, the QL 50 and the Amstrad 53. The prices are for the computers as purchased, including VAT. The BBC requires some means of storage and display. The QL2 needs a display, but does have microdrives and a range of business programs. The Amstrad comes as a ready-to-run system with a pack of 12 programs. Everyone will have a different interpretation of the final tally based on their own particular needs and preferences.
David, I rather enjoyed that. Come and take a seat, especially the bit where he dissolved into the bottom right-hand corner. Now, Tony, why do you as a publisher like to see bench tests in your magazine?
Well, we find that an enormous number of people buy the magazine specifically to read the bench tests.
So from your point of view, it makes good commercial sense, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Now, from the editorial point of view, Graham, does a bench test really tell us anything? Or is it just an elaborate device to fill up the pages with respect?
No, they're an excellent way of discovering, by way of independent objective criteria and the weightings you've used here, how well the machines will perform for you.
Right, but do the criteria ever change? As new machines come onto the market, do you start testing new things that you formerly were not testing?
Perhaps your perspective on the machines changes as the machines become capable of doing more advanced things, but it's a very basic approach which is constant.
Right. How do you think it works on television?
Very well. A lot more exciting.
Well, yes, and you don't have to read it, that's true. Now, Guy, what are your views on bench tests in general and this one in particular?
Well, bench tests are limited. They're very valuable. What I always feel about them is that it would be nice if you could actually put some money into them. What I'd like to know is how these machines compare with an ideal machine. Do you need to spend a lot of money to make this a proper machine, like buying extra discs? And what perhaps the viewers can help us with is by giving us a few definitions of what an ideal machine might be. Would it have a portable machine? Would it have colour? All that sort of thing. I'd like to have some ideas from the viewers, and then we can compare existing machines with a real machine, rather than some of them which are getting a little old-fashioned.
Seems to me what you're saying is that you're trying to institute a new benchmark for bench tests. Instead of comparing each machine with its peers, you would like each machine to be compared with some notionally perfect or ideal machine. Is that right?
That's right. I feel that the technology has advanced, but the machines haven't. And that people can see they want this machine for that feature, but they would like also to have something new. They'd like to perhaps have a colour and a black and white display. They'd like to have a portable display. They'd like to have a built-in modem. I don't know what. And they want to know how much more it would cost if they buy one of these old ones to add that. And then they can make a real comparison.
Or maybe they'll tell us. Now, David, we had an item there that ran, 7.5, 8 minutes, right? And obviously it doesn't take up the same amount of space as it would in the magazine, where you can get a lot more information because it's in print. But how much work do you have to do to come to the conclusions that you gave us in that short time?
About 40 hours for each machine.
So what we saw there, and what one reads in the paper, is the distillation of, 120 hours worth?
That's right, yeah.
Do you ever get surprised? Do you come across a new machine that has a new feature for which you haven't got a grouping, a thing to put it in?
Well, they all deal with input, output and processing, but now and again something crops up which is really whizzo, a video disc or something like this. It goes beyond the scope of a bench test. You put it on whatever bit it belongs to.
And you get enthusiastic about it, do you?
Get enthusiastic about it, rave about it, whatever.
I see. All right, now, you may have some ideas for future bench tests, or perhaps, more importantly, you might have some ideas about what the ideal benchmark machine would be if you could only think of it to satisfy Guy's point. If you have ideas in those areas, then by all means write to us using the good old Royal Mail. Or, of course, if you're a bit more advanced, and send us some electronic mail. Our Prestel mailbox is on page 7776. That's 7776 on Prestel. And now for the secret of the annoying flashing blob. Here's Dr. Mike Thorne, who knows all.
I'd like to tempt you to take part in an experiment which we'll be carrying out over the next few weeks. You can take part if you've got a BBC, Commodore 64 or Spectrum 48K micro. Apart from that, you'll need a soldering iron, a few electronic bits and pieces I'll tell you about in a moment, and a spare couple of hours. Now, we're all used to sending software by making little electrons run up and down a wire, but in our experiment, it's the turn of the photons. Yes, we'll be transmitting software by means of the light which has been flashing at the side of your screen. It may seem a crazy idea, but at least one company we know of, First Quad Limited, has applied to patent a commercial system. Anyway, to pick up programs from the flashing square, you'll need to build a receiver like this. Here's the bit that does the actual light detection. A little phototransistor, just like inside a light pen. Now you'll need to use the receiver together with the receiver program. We'll be sending that out in sound form next week, so have your tape recorder or video recorder ready then. For the Commodore 64 and BBC Micro, there are just 11 electrical components in the receiver. For the 48K Spectrum, some additional components are necessary because it doesn't have a user port. And there it is. Whatever your micro, these components are all readily available from organisations like Maplin's Electronics or your local Tandy store, and the total cost is about £4 for BBC, £5 for Commodore 64 and £8 for Spectrum 48K. The most expensive single item being the plug connecting the receiver to the micro. Personal Computer World magazine contains the list of parts for your micro, the circuit diagram and a set of instructions. I'm now going to show you what to have to do for the Commodore 64 receiver, and the others are very similar. Well, the first thing is to cut yourself a piece of Vero board of the right size, and then mount the integrated circuit holder. This will take the one chip which is to be used in the circuit, a retriggerable monostable. It's a bit of a mouthful, that, but what it does in effect is to send a 1 to the computer if the flashing square is white, and a 0 if the flashing square is black. Now, because the square is flashing on and off, if we check it too often, then we'll think one white square was 2. Alternatively, if we don't check it often enough, then we'll miss some of the flashes. So timing is crucial, and that's achieved in the circuit by means of resistors and a capacitor. Well, the next stage is to mount all 6 of the fixed value resistors, so either just 5, and then one variable resistor. The variable resistor is crucial because whether the square seems white or black to the receiver board will depend upon the brightness and contrast settings of your TV. So we'll have to adjust that later on to your own particular TV set. Now, the capacitor, the only thing to remember about that is to get it in the right way round. And here, if the white blob is facing you, then positive is on the right. If you don't get it in the right way round, then because it's of the electrolytic type, it'll probably blow up. Quite harmless, though. And also, you can next put in the 4 wire links. And on this board, we've done all of that. Well, the next stage is to add the battery terminals, and then the user port plug. This one's for the Commodore 64, as is the whole board, in fact. Now, on this one, we've got all of those. And also, I've added the wire which goes out to the phototransistor. Allow a good length for this, or you'll regret it later. Right, well, that completes all the connections to the main board, so now we can put in the transistor and the integrated circuit itself. The only thing to remember here is that you must put the transistor in the right way round. Its orientation is given by this little pip on the side, and the chip too, make sure that pip lines up with the little pip which is on the integrated circuit holder itself. Right, so the board is done. We now need to make the phototransistor mounting. For that, we've used a cup hook like you get for sort of ordinary kitchen use. Just remove the hook with a pair of pliers, like that, and then make a hole in the back just big enough to take the phototransistor. I'm using a drill bit because I think that's probably the safest way. And then mount the phototransistor with a sensitive end into the mouth of the sucker. And there, like that. When you've done that, seal it with some bathroom sealant or silicone rubber, or I suppose even Blue Tack would do, anything so long as you can make an airtight fit. Right, here's one with all that done. All we have to do now is to solder 2 of the transistors connection to 2 of these wires here, and the receiver board is finished. Next, we have to adjust the variable resistor, but that's easy with the software we'll be transmitting next week. First, plug everything in, connect up a battery supply to the receiver, and then load and run the setting up program. Now, you now put the sticker onto the white square, there, and use a screwdriver to adjust the variable resistor. Pressing the space bar each time, you have to get it so that the star there, this one here, just disappears. There. And then you're all set to receive software transmitted by light. Disconnect your TV from the computer and plug the aerial back in. Don't alter the TV brightness or contrast settings. Load and run the receiver program and tune into 4 computer buffs, because we'll be transmitting the software actually during future programs. When the white square appears on the screen, it'll probably be somewhere on the side, then stick the sucker on, press the space bar when we tell you, and Bob's your uncle. By the way, the design of the circuit and software was done by people in our computing laboratories at University College Cardiff. My thanks for all your help, chaps.
Now, if you didn't get that all in one go, don't worry, because on page 184 of the March edition of Personal Computer World is a very large article explaining exactly how to build all that hardware. In the item, Mike was using a white sucker, white cup hook sucker, so that you could see it more clearly. In real life, we suggest you go out and try and find something like this, a thick black one, because the white one will reflect too much of the light signal. Now, we're going to be transmitting the tuning and receiving software as an audio tone in next week's programme, so stand by with a cassette recorder, or better still, video record the whole programme. But if you have trouble getting it all down, don't worry. Just tune in to Channel 4's Oracle, that's Foretel, on page 458, and you will find the computer programme listings, which will help you out. We're not actually transmitting the LightPen software until March the 4th. That's to give you time to build the hardware with which to receive it. So we start flashing in earnest, if you'll forgive the expression, on the 4th of March. Now, we reckon 1985 is going to be the year of the modem. So here now is Jane with Modem Corner.
Each week we'll be telling you how you can log through to different computers using your micro and also the telephone line. And with me here I have Ben.
Hello, Jane.
Now, Ben, we've known that the best way that people can learn how to go online to a computer is to go through some of the bulletin boards. Can you first of all explain what a bulletin board is?
Indeed. It's very much like the electronic equivalent of a notice board, which you find in some foyers of hotels or whatever, where people can leave messages to each other and so on, except we get through to it using a telephone.
Right. Now, we know that our friends, the Nottingham Building Society, have set up a special bulletin board for us. So perhaps let's log through to that.
Certainly. To get to it, we use Prestel, so I'll dial the Prestel telephone number, which in London is 618.
And, of course, if you live outside the London area and you don't know your local Prestel number, ring free phone Prestel services during office hours, and they should be able to tell you the local number.
OK, Prestel is answering now. Switch the modem online. On the screen, we can see the Prestel welcome page. We've had a password specially set up, which means that everyone can get onto this system free. It's very simple. 10 fours for the customer ID and 4 fours for the password.
So it's easy, all the fours?
Yeah. Now, I'll flip through the first couple of frames to speed things up. And we'll go to the demonstration frame. There we are, the welcome frame to the bulletin board.
I can see at the bottom of the screen it's actually telling me all the keys I have to hit to continue.
Yes, we've made it very simple, so you just follow the instructions on the bottom of the board, press 1 in that case. And here's the main menu.
Now, the menu says messaging and referencing, further information on home link and logging off. Can you explain what messaging is?
Yes, that's the actual bulletin board section of the whole system, where people can leave messages to each other and also read messages which are on the system.
Right, and referencing we'll be looking at possibly later.
Yes, that'll contain programme notes and so on.
Well, Ben, thank you very much and see you next week.
Thank you.
Now, remember, it's the Nottingham Building Society bulletin board that we're looking at. All the fours of the customer ID and all the fours for the password as well. We'll be looking at something else next week, and obviously the home link bullet will be improving as the weeks go by.
Well, now, don't exactly rush to get your message on the bullet board just yet, not until you've heard the latest industry news, views and gossip from Guy Cuny.
Well, the first news we have for you is of Amstrad. Amstrad, the company which hit the market for the first time last year, is suffering from what it calls speculation. It turns out that one of the industry magazines has very cheekily printed details of a new machine which the company hopes to launch in June. And of course, if they know all about it now, nobody's going to buy it between now and June, which will leave them short of cash. Well, my sources tell me that they needn't get too upset about it, because the difference between the current machine and the new one isn't all that special. The new one does have one nice new feature, and that is instead of the cassette, instead it has a disc. Apart from that, it's very like the old one, which I suppose is good enough news. The next news is from Prism. Prism used to distribute Sinclair's Micro, the Spectrum, and they, of course, are in receivership at the moment. Rather sinister news, the chairman, the man who founded the company, got beaten up in the street last week. Of course, everybody assumed that this was one or another creditor who was upset about losing his money. It turns out, and I'm told I can't say too much, that it's rather more sinister than that, and the police are investigating other links. The report from the West Coast, from our reporter John Vorak, is of Steve Wozniak. Wozniak, known as Woz, is the man who designed the Apple II. He left for a while, came back, and now he's left again. Apparently he's not happy about the way the company is ignoring his bright ideas and the way it's become a bureaucracy. My friend Vorak tells me he's pretty sure the company pressurized him to quit because he wasn't really fitting in. Apple II in this country is also making quite a lot of headlines. They've decided to step into the breach where the government has stopped by subsidizing schools' micros. Of course, their objective is to get the Apple II into schools where it's been not subsidized. A lot of people are going to see this as a way of trying to steal the market from Acorn. I think it's a bit more subtle than that. I think you'll find that it's to do with Apricot. Apricot launched in America. That makes them a threat to Apple. Apple doesn't like the idea of that and is therefore going to compete as hard as it can in this country. And, of course, the educational market is a good one to go to because the Apricot does have an educational machine. Finally, Acorn. Well, of course, Acorn's been in the news. They've had discussions all over the weekend. We don't know what's happening. When I have news, we'll let you have it. That's it for this week. Tony?
Did you notice Guy's intriguing new use of a microcomputer as a television teleprompter? Well done, that. A further bonus from 4Computer Buffs. We're giving away some free software every week for a different machine. It's on Channel 4 on Tuesdays. It's transmitted between 10 and 10:30 and 11 and 11:30. And tomorrow it's from Acorn Soft for, of course, the BBC Micro. You won't be in at that time, so either set your cassette recorder on a time clock or, better still, get your video recorder to work for you.
And you can also find more information about 4Computer Buffs on Channel 4 Oracle, page 458.
And finally, don't forget your ideas for opening titles. After all, we have to have some way of starting next week's programme. Till then, from all of us, bye-bye.